Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. I'm Geoff Pender, joined here today with Mississippi Today's Michael Goldberg. Michael, welcome.
Good morning, Geoff. Good to be with you. And we also have the privilege of being joined this morning by Representative Rob Roberson. Representative Roberson is the chair of the House Education Committee. He was elected in 2015 and represents District 43, which includes Oktibbeha and Winston counties. He is also the board attorney for the Oktibbeha Board of Supervisors. He is a graduate of Mississippi College School of Law and Mississippi State University. Good morning, Representative Roberson.
Good morning. Good to see you guys.
Hey, thank you for joining us. No, you've been very busy. You are in charge of a very busy committee, as you and I were just chatting before the recording started. Give us some idea. We're early in the session, but I think you were telling me you get a lot of bills coming to the Education Committee. Is that correct?
We get quite a few. This year, we've got about 300, close to, when it's all said and done, we may have close to 350 to 400 when it.
Wow.
But we're kind of eliminating a lot of things that are redundant and that kind of thing. Monday, I'll be going in and we will try to get this whittled down to about 40 or 50 bills that we're going to seriously look at. And hopefully we can whittle that down again, but it may end up being that many bills that we actually end up having to handle. We only took out about 11 last week, so we've got quite a few more to kind of go through.
Well, Representative Roberson, we're going to get into some of those priorities, some of the individual bills that you're most focused on. I want to start by asking you to get into some terminology, because I think that the sort of theme, if you want to say that, of the education debate this session revolves around school choice. But I think even getting into that sort of concept, people have different conceptions of what school choice means, what it really entails. So can we just start by having you kind of define how you see school choice?
Well, first of all, I really have to be careful in terms of how I think about it, because you're right. Everybody has their own thought process as to what that actually means. School choice for someone that's very much a public school proponent might think school choice is public to public and having the ability for a child that's in one district go to another district. On the other side of the extreme in that, you might have school choice as being able for a parent to decide that private school is the more appropriate place for their child to go. And their thought process for school choice is that public money should follow that child into a private school. Now, those are two very delineating, and the basis of the delineation is going to be whether or not we've determined that private or public money, tax dollars, should follow that child and that child into that private school. There's so many dynamics at play there, and there's so many little variations in between there. We've kind of already got a system set up in Mississippi where children with disabilities are already getting the savings account that they can go to a school of their choice that meets their needs. The bigger issue is whether or not we're going to expand that to where whether it be DNF districts, allowing those kids that are in a DNF district to go to a private school that's if they don't have a public school within the 30 miles. Now, that is something that we're currently looking at. And the reality is with this, though, from my standpoint, when I'm looking at this, the question I always ask is this going to significantly benefit the population that we have here in Mississippi in our schools? And that answer right now for me is not necessarily very obvious. I really want to do something that's going to substantially change the lives of our children, that especially in these districts that are very poor and generally they're not doing very well. So you're right. There is a vast range of ideas that are attached to what it means to be school choice.
So getting into a few of those ideas, both the speaker and the lieutenant governor thus far have come out in favor of some form of open enrollment, or some call it portability, which is public to public transfers. There has been less of an appetite, based on our reporting among the rank and file, in the using public money to pay for private school tuition. So can you give us a sense of where the caucus kind of stands on both of those ideas based on the early conversations you've had this session?
I think I'm in agreement with you. I think there is a little consternation. I don't think there really is on the portability side of it. We're public to public. I don't think really anybody has a major issue with that side of it. But I do think that some of our members are a little concerned about what that looks like. I'll be honest with you, a lot of your private schools are a little, I guess, have some consternation about that as well. They don't want necessarily, the reason you have a private school is you typically want to do something different than what public schools are doing. And they don't want to be under the same testing requirements. They don't want to necessarily have to be under the requirement to maybe have church and state separated. There's lots of dynamics at play there. And a lot of the rank and file members, whether they're Democrat or Republican, because to be honest with you, this doesn't have an R or a D beside it. This is, I think we were talking earlier, everybody has an opinion about education, and everybody thinks they're kind of an expert on it. And the truth is, the experts are teachers and our superintendents and the people that work in those arenas. But we all have this opinion that, if we'll do this, then everything else will be better. And in all honesty, my experience in education is that we've got to take these issues and be slow in how we move forward, but try to make certain that we're not making mistakes to move ourselves backwards. Mississippi is a state of less than 3 million people. We have a little under 144 school districts. We have limited money to go to these school districts. So my job, the way I look at my job, is to try to bring out what will purport to make us a little bit better. And if we can do that every year and make ourselves a little bit better, we'll pull ourselves in the right direction. And I think in a lot of ways we've done that in the last few years. But I think we can always do a better job of being certain of that. So I do have my own questions as to how this is going to look. If I thought that school choice would be the silver bullet to solve all problems with this, I'll be honest with you, it'd make my life so much easier. But the truth is, my job is to try to make certain that we're not making mistakes, and we're not making major mistakes where you can't return. And that's kind of a route. When you go down that road, you're going to have a hard time returning if you've made a mistake.
Mr. Chairman, obviously not peculiar to Mississippi. I mean, there's been a push on a much wider basis for some pretty broad expansion of, I guess you would call it, school choice in the vouchers, the public money to private schools or whatever. There's obviously a push to broadly expand that, be it vouchers, be it ESAs. For this year, whatever shakes out from the legislature, I mean, do you foresee a broad expansion of that?
I think we're going to have some expansion of that. One of the things that's going to happen next week is we're going to have a conversation about what this looks like. And it's going to be similar to what we're doing right here. When I go to my caucus, I'm going to tell them the good, the bad, and the proverbial ugly on this, and let them know that if we do decide to do some of this, there are going to be some issues in terms of additional funding that we may need. The children that are currently in private schools, if we did a carte blanche deal where we expanded school choice right now, it would be a substantial increase in our education budget, because a lot of people don't understand this. Those children that are in private schools today, they aren't accounted for in our formula currently. So that money has to come from somewhere, and I'm not in favor of taking that away from our public schools as they stand right now. So that's a substantial increase. Now, what we're probably going to end up having a bigger conversation about is those districts in D and F areas that these kids don't have a whole lot of choices. The problem that you have with that, though, is if you're in the Delta and you're at a school that's a D or an F, there's really not a whole lot of choices, even if you had an ESA or even if you had that money to go somewhere else. So from my standpoint, I don't know that we're necessarily creating a vast solution, although it may be a piece of a solution. I certainly don't think it is the one that's going to basically take us over the top and give these kids another direction to go. Now, there is an argument that if the money's available, you may have schools that start to build in those areas and will come there. I don't know that I necessarily buy into that equation just because they haven't come yet. And we do have a certain amount of school choice in this state. If you're a wealthy person, you have school choice. If you're a person that can afford to send your kid to a public school or a private school, and you've got the dollars that you're willing to spend on that, you can go do that today. It's the children that from my standpoint, that don't have any choices, is the ones that we should be trying to defend as much as we can. And from my standpoint, those are the children that if we're going to have this discussion in terms of moving forward in that, we've got to make certain that they're not left behind. And I'm not leaving the poorest of the poor in failing school districts. I'm just not going to do it, because what's going to happen is they're just going to get worse, not better.
One thing I think you touched on a minute ago too, there's also been a debate if we're going to send more public money to private schools, those private schools should have to meet the same accountability standards. And, there's been some pushback against that, as I understand.
You're exactly right. My mama used to tell me when I was growing up that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And what that means is, in this situation, is what's good for public may be good for private, or what's good for private should be good for public. The truth of the matter is that if I'm the superintendent of a private school, I'm probably not going to accept the public money, because it might change the way we're approaching this. I get why they have a tremendous amount of consternation about moving forward in that arena. Just because I don't require testing in that arena today doesn't mean that 2 years from now that there may not be a push in that direction. Politics is a funny business, and we have a tendency, especially in education, to go down roads that are flavor of the day. And I have a tendency to not really like going down those flavor of the day dynamics, because they generally don't work, and they generally don't have a long life expectancy or shelf life. They end up having the following year, we realize that's probably not what we wanted to do. So we're going to be careful how we approach some of this stuff. And I expect that our private schools will be doing the same thing when it comes to accepting the money from taxpayers, because they're going to have some reconciliation, whether even if that just be the state auditor's office is going to want to know what you're doing with money.
Someone mentioned to me here recently, there seems to be an overarching assumption that all private schools are better than all public schools. And in Mississippi, that's not the case, correct? I mean, we have some really good private schools, but we have some that are maybe not so good, correct?
Listen, I will put my school here in Oktibbeha County against any school in the state, and that's public or private. The reality is we've got some really good teachers here in our area, and we've got some good teachers in private school. I'm certainly not throwing rocks at them, but I kind of take issue with that. A lot of times people send their kids to private schools for lots of reasons. They may have a child that wants to play sports that may have not been good enough to play in the bigger school at their public area. There may be a situation where the private school had a dyslexia program. I can tell you from my experience, whenever my son was little, we sent him to the private school for a dyslexia program. We didn't have one in our public school, and we needed it. So there's so many different reasons that people do this that have very little to do with one's better than the other. Now, the truth of the matter is we have some really poor schools that in my opinion have several reasons for them not doing well, whether that be for DNF. A lot of times it's population. A lot of times it's losing population. It's a continuing loss of the job market in that area. And you can't run a school. The smaller your school gets, the fewer the kids that you have. It's awfully hard to run a school with 500 kids and try to keep a certain level up. So the truth of the matter is, I think it's a misnomer, and there's usually not a private school in that location as well. So in that area, to suggest that a private school could even survive is probably not fair either, because the population's just not large enough.
Just going back for a second to the open enrollment conversation, you mentioned high-performing school districts, and a few minutes ago you discussed kind of the consternation that any changes to these policies can invoke. You have, coming into this legislative session, some high-performing school districts putting out, flyers talking about concerns, changes to school culture. Some of your colleagues have been quite candid about what they believe the subtext to those sorts of claims are. I'm just sort of wondering, from a sort of an enforcement perspective, can you talk through, I believe Representative Jansen Owen has a bill that addresses this open enrollment issue. How would you ensure that both on the front end and on the back end, that if a student wants to transfer from public to public, they would be able to do so without either the school they currently attend or the school they'd like to attend stopping them?
The school that they're currently in, in the law, it's going to say that they cannot stop the child. Now, here's some guardrails that we've got to be careful with. If that school that child wants to go to is already full, or there is a reasonable reason that they are not going to be able to accept children, then we're not going to force them to take that child. It's almost impossible to put guardrails up there that will make certain that child is being treated fairly, except for the fact that we're going to try to put MDE on notice that I have no desire for these schools to go out here cherry picking. When I say cherry picking, I mean going after the football star, going after the kid that makes the best ACT. Now, here's the truth: we already have that going on today. Some of this already is going on, and you cannot. It's awfully hard to keep bad actors from doing that. But the more this becomes a policy statewide, some of our school districts are going to have to be careful. They could potentially open themselves up for a lawsuit if they are doing things that would suggest that they're only accepting the kids that are, well, here's the reality in Mississippi that we've dealt with for years, from a racial dynamic, from we don't want to take anybody unless they have an ACT score of whatever that cutoff scale for them. Right. I think we have to be careful with those types of situations, and we're going to have to figure out, and this may be a learn as we go type thing, because we come back every year. If we make a mistake on this, I'm a firm believer we can come back next year and tighten this up if we need to. Are we going to catch all of the nuances here? Probably not, but we're going to try, and we're going to sit down with the superintendents, and we're going to sit down with our Dr. Evans and have this conversation about, what are some of the guardrails that we could put up here to ensure that we're not having some unfairness go on here. I don't know that we're going to be able to achieve perfection with this, but we're going to certainly try to make certain that we're reeling this in as much as we can.
At the heart of public education policy debate in Mississippi, typically you'll find funding is a key. What do you foresee this year? We have a new formula, year-old formula. Do you foresee meeting that formula, increasing the the K-12 budget, and also that brings up questions of teacher pay. What do you foresee on that front?
I haven't seen a major movement for teacher pay. We do have some bills on the table that we're looking at to make certain that the school nurses and some other dynamics of people that are working within the school district to make sure that they are able to get paid what they should get paid in those arenas. I doubt very seriously we will have a teacher pay bill coming out this year. That's always something that we're thinking about, and that's always something that's at least from an education chairman standpoint, that's something I'm always looking at and trying to chase. It's awfully hard to chase a moving target, as y'all well know. The Southeastern average for teachers is continually moving, and it's really hard for us to keep up with it, to be honest with you. The reality is that we just have to try to do the best we can. One of the things that I would really like to focus a lot more of our attention on is on the IHL budget side, though, and making certain that when we're teaching our teachers, we're teaching the things that will help them be successful in the classroom. And I think that's a conversation that's probably well overdue. Now, you're going to get pushback from your universities and colleges sometimes for that. They think that you're getting too involved in what their job is. But the truth of the matter is, until the last few years, we weren't even teaching teachers to teach to read. That was mind blowing to me when that was brought to me. But some of the IHL people are getting a handle on that better now. But I think we're going to have to, as legislators, make certain that those are the types of things that are happening. I don't believe a teacher leaves the teaching profession, and I could be wrong about this. I'm certainly no expert when it comes to reading people's minds, but the bulk of the teachers that I talk to, these are people that spent their entire lives, number one, wanting to be a teacher. That they have a passion for it. We're losing these people within the first 5 years. I mean, a lot of your young teachers, within that first 5 years, they're going, "Oh, this is not for me." Well, a lot of that's because they haven't been trained. A lot of that's because they've been thrown into the classroom and they didn't have the supervisory person helping them be successful, training them. Whenever I became an attorney, law school didn't teach me to be an attorney. Law school gave me the tools to go out here and learn my skills while I was practicing. Teaching's the same way. We are going to have to do a better job of supporting. So to your point, I think pay is very much a significant part of nobody wants to work for free, but I think something that we could do far more that would be successful in terms of making certain that we keep good teachers and we grow that profession in the state would be make certain that we're giving them the training they deserve on the front end, and then giving them some ability to have role models that are at the school that they can use to benefit their ability to become excellent teachers and be successful. People quit because, in my opinion, they quit because they're not being successful. They don't feel like they're able to be the best that they feel like they can be. When you fail at something multiple times, or at least you feel like you're failing at something, you're not likely to keep doing it.
I know that from our past conversations, you are of the belief that there are too many school districts in the state. You've talked about ways to kind of address failing schools. And I believe, you see consolidation as playing a part in this school choice debate more broadly. So talk about how consolidation fits into your agenda this year, how it would work, how you're addressing the concerns that some have.
Whenever I've talked to people about consolidations, generally speaking, the first nerve that you hit are the people that think, "Oh, well, you're shutting my school down. You're punishing our community. You're taking away something from our community." The truth of the matter is, this conversation about consolidation for me is not about money. It's not about punishing. It's not about any of the negative dynamics that are at play here. I had a conversation with somebody. We actually put two particular school counties on the hot seat, this year to have a discussion about what's happening. One of them is where I grew, where I was born. Greenville is where I was born, and I have family that still lives there. One of the superintendents I heard make a comment that if this is going to hurt their culture, their community, it's going to do all of these things. Well, here's the problem with that kind of thinking. We know what they're doing today doesn't work. I think Washington County has 4 school districts right now. They have had a loss of population. And, 40 years ago, 35 years ago, there may have been a population that could keep those schools afloat. But when you're losing population and you're constantly being in that D or F grading over that time period, you're going to naturally continue to lose people. And one of the arguments constantly is well, you're not putting enough money in a particular school. Well, if you've only got 500 kids in one of those school districts, there's probably not going to be a likelihood of that school district being able to afford the things that they need to afford. Because not only are you getting the money to run your school from the state, you've got the $6,500, $6,800 base, and then you have the weights that we put on that from the state, but then you also have the tax base that's coming from that community. And if that tax base has been eroded over the years, you can't operate your school based on that. So my game plan is to eliminate some of the inability for the small little schools or these areas that have continually done poorly, and get rid of some of that administrative waste out there. Take that money. I have no intention of that money coming back into the state coffers. That money should go back into those school districts. Make certain that we're able to continue moving forward. If there are areas that need to have brick and mortar to make a better school, some of these schools that we're talking about, when it rains, water pours through their gymnasium. When it's hot in the summer, their air conditioners aren't working. Now, we can't expect children to learn if they're sitting in a rainy or hot room or cold room, or their cafeteria doesn't get out, is not able to get the good hot food out for them to eat. Because sometimes a lot of these kids, especially in poor areas, they may have all of their meals provided for them at this school. And so from my standpoint, this is about taking a real look at what it is that we're trying to achieve, accomplish, and what's the goal. If the goal is educating kids instead of making certain that the football team is the state champions, I'll be honest with you, I'm proud for all the schools that have state champion football teams. That's great. I want a state championship spelling bee coming from there. I want these kids being able to go get a job, become reporters like you guys, and become attorneys and become doctors, and you know what, become an electrician, do whatever they want to do. But we're not giving them that ability whenever all we focus on is, we're more concerned about the superintendent losing his job than we are what future job that child's going to get. So I'm going to be pretty tough when it comes to pushing forward with this, not because I'm trying to harm these areas. I'm trying to push forward because it just makes sense.
Well, I think we're coming up pretty close to time here. I just wanted to, close by asking, unless Geoff has any other questions. I believe we just wrapped up week 3 of the legislative session. It feels like week 33, to be honest. What can we expect as far as the timeline is concerned for advancing some of these proposals you've discussed today? Give our listeners a sense of what they can expect in the near future.
Next week is going to be big. I'll have a lot more answers in terms of what we're going to be able to push forward. So I guess I'd tell you that by Thursday, you'll see a pretty good indicator of what we're going to be able to do. I'm not bringing out anything that I honestly feels like is going to fall flat on its face. And that's every chairman. No chairman wants to walk out there and lose a bill on the floor. As you guys know how this goes. We don't typically want to embarrass ourselves. However, I'm not beyond bringing something out there that is controversial, even if it's just to have the conversation. my mind does not operate in the sense of this is all about politics. It's not. It's, to me, about trying to find some solutions. Even if it's an unpopular conversation, let's have it. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out where we're going. So this week's going to be pretty important in terms of what we're going to do. I have every intention of pushing some things that I believe will be in the end in the best interest of these kids.
Mr. Chairman, as we pass some of these winnowing deadlines in the next couple of weeks or whatever, if it's all right, we'd like to get a promise from you to come back on and give us a further update, if you would.
What politician hasn't been a big enough ham to want to come and talk about themselves and their bills? So I will be happy to be here with you guys.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on and giving us this update, and we look forward to talking with you further.